Hello and welcome back to the Adults Table. I'm Ryan, once a devout Fundy, now embracing the role of a heretic.
And I'm Rabbi Mike, and we together delve into ancient narratives and we foster some very authentic discussions.
That's right. And our last session was quite an eye opener. I would have had no idea that sister wife was a motif that, number one, could be adapted, but had such historical roots. Who knew?
That's right. All we do is connect the dots. We use that discerning eye. And each time we teach and every time we read a story, it teaches us something new.
That's right. So do me a favor, grab your seat and don't move your meat, and we will be right back.
The Adults Table. Theological Conversations Uncensored.
And we are back, ready to
I
uncover
am.
some hidden gems from our past. Tonight, Ryan has taken the lead and taken us down a journey that I am super excited about.
Yes, it's going to be some otherworldly themes we'll be discussing tonight. I thought it was fitting because it's spooky season. I don't know if I've ever really been able to do a show like this. And I thought, well, it kind of just fits perfectly, not necessarily with our last discussion, but it fits in with the theme of learning about ancient texts, about El. We've kind of dove into some of his history. We even learned about his private part, which
Heck
is
yeah.
super cool. So I thought, okay, well, we can kind of keep that focus on L. We learn more about him. And I think I have a lot of info to put on the table tonight. So we better get to it.
Let's put it on the table.
Let's put it on the table, baby.
Mm.
Ooh, I'm getting good with these buttons.
Woo.
I like pushing buttons. It's fun.
Don't we all?
In a good way. In a good way.
Yeah.
I don't want to push anybody's buttons in a bad way tonight. All right. So I told you before, listen, I got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. So if you need to jump, you might just have to jump in there. Okay, Rabbi Mike.
That's okay.
You might have to play some jumping in here with like we're
Okay,
playing jump
you
rope
got
or
it.
something. All right. Okay. So I thought it would be fun to discuss the underworld again because it is spooky season and there is a lot to unpack. I've got several slides, they're not all important, so if I skip past, don't worry, it's okay. I'm just trying to consolidate some time here. So, we are going to talk about an intoxicating feast called the Marzea. Now, it centers around El and his Rephaim, which are these warriors that we'll learn about later throughout some of these slides and some texts. And hopefully, what I can do for you tonight is tie in how all of these ideas work together. And maybe towards the end, we can talk about why they were condemned, how they were condemned, you know, all those things that make us understand how they've just kind of become erased. And the purpose is to bring these memories back. So let's do that. So ancestor veneration, necromancy, ritualistic activities, divination, and feasts. That is what tonight is going to be about. Some good stuff. So the Marzihu, does that sound right? Or Marzea? Like, how would you say that?
It's in transliteration, so it's tough for me. But if we were
Okay.
looking at, if we were looking at some sort of Semitic language, um, yeah, the I sound would have an E sound, so it'd be a Marzihu, or
Marzihu.
Morzea with an S sound underneath. But I'd have to see it in the original. But I think you're good.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, it's a really cool feast where they drink to intoxication. Our high god El is there. And interestingly enough, he is called Rapiu Malek Olami, and I'm not sure if anybody in the audience would know what that means. I wonder, you probably know what that means, but it is the Hail One, the King of Eternity. So that's another epithet of El. And I'm not sure if Repu would sound familiar to anybody in our audience. We're going to get to it, but there is a connection to the Rephaim of the Hebrew people. So at this feast, there would be gods in attendance. There's all kinds of spirits. There's ritualistic activities where they're eating, they're drinking, they're grilling. And if you ask me, the grilling and the eating and the drinking till intoxication sounds like something to me that is done on a regular basis in America. And when you think about it, this feast was probably for, a specific group of people. It's a way of, this God uh, having a connection with his kinsman, his son, which are the Rephaim, his warriors. And it's like a little a pack almost, if you know what I mean. So it's cool that these kinds of ideas, activities exist today, completely different, right? But still just the gathering together. So hopefully we can figure out what some of the significance is behind these texts and these feasts. Unfortunately, there is a lot of ambiguity because some of the texts are broken. We don't have all that many. And sometimes the text just has a lot of incantation, but it doesn't per se give the reasons as to why, how it was formed, etc. So there's a lot of guesswork in it, but it's still interesting. So if I say possibly or maybe, it's simply because there's not a consensus to some of this, to some of these ideas. So here is the Rephaim. Now, this is where I'll ask you if I'm saying this right. Is it Reshpe?
Where are you at, Loie?
Oh, RPM. Would RPM, like just in the
Oh, just in those Semitic letters.
yes.
I'd have to know what the vowel sounds are, but
Okay.
so Rapuma is possible, but hard to know without the vowels. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we might see it in the other text. Honestly,
Yeah.
like I'm just taking this from books,
No, that's cool. Yeah.
Not like I can read Hebrew or Semitic languages. I just I just read what the smart people say.
Yeah.
So we find them in inscriptions, in the text from Ugarit that I've talked about. So these are going back to somewhere around 1500, 1200 BCE and extending into history back to an Amorite tradition. So we could be looking back to something, I don't know, as far as like 1900 BCE-ish.
Yeah.
So the meaning of Rapiuma is to heal or make whole, but it also could mean to heal, to mend, or to make perfect. So I think that makes a lot of sense when you consider these are kings or heroes, and they are like divinized humans that are connected to the high God. And when you think about how that symbiotic relationship works, these men kind of keep the God alive, and the God kind of protects the kings, and this kind of cultic circle that happens. So perfection is kind of like, yeah, that's my perfect son. He does for me, I do for him. That's how I see it anyway. Mm-hmm. Sure, why not? Why not? So these are the aristocrats of the land of Canaan. They could have been any kind of hero, like a judge, warrior type guy, and they resided in Canaan. But once they passed away, once they moved on to the afterlife, they would then live in Sheol. And this wasn't like a derogatory thing. There's no negative connotation. It was just an afterlife of these heroes. And what would happen is the next in line, like the next Rapiuma, that would pass away would be welcomed into the afterlife by those who already were deceased, deified kings. So it's an honorable thing. I mean, there's so many other traditions. Oh my God, I'm blanking out. What's the really big one where the warriors go in the afterlife?
Valhalla.
Thor. Thank you. You knew exactly what I was talking about.
Very much
Right.
Valhalla. Yes.
Right. It's
Halls of
just
Valhalla.
it's a similar type of afterlife. Obviously not the same, but everybody's, thinking about, hey, what's after
Right.
this? Okay, so how do we get the similarity between the Rephaim of the Bible and the Rapiuma in the Ugaritic text? Well,
Mhm.
in the Bible, we learn that, well, we get a few different ideas about who they are. Sometimes they're mentioned as a race of giants. Sometimes they're just human kings. And I believe that the reason that over time these heroes get turned into these race of giants is because they are taking their enemy and they're just making them even larger. It's
Mhm.
something that people do. Your little fish turns into a 5-foot fish. Uh, it's pretty cool. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, look at these people that we beat. Our God is with us to help us even beat these giants. But in the Ugaritic text, we learn that yes, they were heroes, yes, they were warriors, but now that term, this idea has been turned on its head. So now they're heroes that need to be defeated by the Israelites, by the Hebrews, when they once were actual, you know, kinsmen of El, people who were looked at to be glorified, right? Somebody who you would look upon with honor. So interesting concept how they did that. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. Now I added Gilgamesh. That's just something I decided to do because of how he's portrayed. He is, like a half god, half human, hybrid type dude.
Mhm.
And then also, what I thought was really interesting, I didn't realize is that he is in the Book of Giants that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So
Mhm.
it could just be a famous name, that's just been heard, or this lore could have been passed around about this man who was pretty gigantic, a
Mhm.
hero and whatnot. Don't know. Now Daniel, we're going to hear a little bit about Daniel tonight in the Marzea feast. No, not in the Marzea feast. I'm sorry. He is mentioned in a couple other of the Rapiuma texts. We may or may not get it tonight, but I hope at some point we could actually get into a more developed story of him because it's really interesting, simply because his name does mean, God is my judge or El is my judge. I really don't know which. I don't even know if it really matters because it's truly just
Mhm.
one and the same. And he is very similar to Ezekiel's Daniel. So maybe one day we can explore that. This is what I found out was really super interesting about this idea coming from, oh goodness, hold on. I wanted to show you this. There we go. Assembly of Didanu or Ditanu. That is mentioned in these Ugaritic texts and these funerary texts. And interestingly enough, Hammurabi, his name is translated as the kinsman is a healer. And I mentioned
Mm.
before that Rappi means healer. And
Yep.
his name is actually connected to Didanu or Ditanu, that assembly that I mentioned before. So this is probably just the cultic ancestors that were related to Hammurabi. So this could be where that cult started. So I just thought that I had no idea. I didn't even realize that, like, the hammer, the abi and the api, like the P and the B.
Mm-hmm.
Just sometimes with the languages, they just switch like that. And I did know that
Mm-hmm.
like Atherat and Asherah, the th and the sh, is similar with the way they pronounce things. I guess that's just the dialect or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow, had no idea that this could be something linked back to Hammurabi. Anyhow, let's keep moving on. We got so much more to go here. So this is one of the funerary texts. We're not really going to read this. What I thought was important about it is that it mentions the fallen ones, the Rephaim. And if I say Rephaim and Rephaim in kind of interchangeably, it's really not a big deal, but I'm trying to be specific.
Sure.
But I might accidentally switch them up. But I thought what was important about here also is just the fact of how you're supposed to sacrifice. That seems to be super important when trying to receive some kind of blessings or whatnot. Like there's always some kind of sacrifice that you've got to give for the god. And this one even mentions, I don't know if this is the same Apparapi, probably not, don't know. But if we look back at whoever King Nikmadu, does that even sound familiar to you? We probably could place the time period, but
Yep.
I'm thinking this is somewhere around, again, 15, 1400, whatnot.
Yeah.
So here are some similar ideas of entities. Not the same. I'm not claiming them to be the same, but there is definitely some cross-contamination when these different cultures that are surrounding each other are thinking about, what's in my afterlife? What is next? There's going to be syncretism. There's going to be borrowing, adapting. It's just how it goes. So, the manes, and it's not mayonnaise, the manes of Rome, Carthage. So these are also spirits of the deceased family members. They had special festivals where they would make drink offerings, pour out libations. I remember learning that from Pat, who is an archaeologist, history. He explained that when you pour out a libation for like they do now, modern times, that is where it came from. So when you see people pouring out one on the grave or on the ground for their friends, their loved ones, goes back to ancient times. It's really cool, the continuation. The shades of Greece. And we'll even see in the text tonight that sometimes the Rapiuma are even called the shades. And that's likely because as these ideas were being written down, they're being discussed somewhere after the 5th century, maybe some of the ideas were even lost. They're trying to figure out who the heck are these guys? What is this? I'm not even sure. Because we find in the Bible, in the Septuagint, they used Titans in replace of Rephaim. So even they were not sure. So you can see that they must have been similar ideas to some extent, that they would even use Titans instead of Rephaim. It's like, I maybe wouldn't have found all these things before, but then I don't know, just diving into these old texts, it just really solidifies how, you just write a story and make it make sense. If you don't know what it is, you just make it up. People are going to believe you. I mean, does that sound mean? But it's kind of what happens. Okay, come on, y'all. This is going to be the best part of the night, because we are going to again see El like we have never seen him before. Sadly, some of this text is because these are clay tablets, and the land was was buried. They just dug these up sometime in the 30s to the 50s, I believe. We're thankful that they're even here. So we might just have to pause at certain moments because the words aren't there. It's only 3 pages long, so it's not much, but it's super cool. Do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
Sure, I can read it. Yeah,
Oh,
I always make
you
you
gonna
read
read?
my stuff.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay.
So yeah, it's a corrupted text because of the we saw this in Atrahasis and all kinds of other things when we just have partial tablets and things like that.
Mm.
But looks like there's plenty here, which is just awesome. So all right, side one. It's like a cassette tape.
You
Side
don't have
one.
to rewind.
Right, exactly. El slaughters game in his house, butchers beasts in his palace, bids gods to the cuts of beef. The gods eat and drink wine till sated. Sated, yes. Vintage till inebriated. Sounds wow, what a party.
I
Yarrow
know.
grills the haunch like something, grabs the hindquarters beneath the tables. As for the gods whom he knows, he grills fare for him to feast. As for the god he does not know, he strikes with sticks beneath the table. He nears a Tartu and Anat. A Tartu grills a steak for him. Anat roasts a rack of ribs. This is just like party grill. It's a cookout. It's a godly cookout.
Right. And I love that it's encouraged that you eat and you drink and the good
Mhm.
stuff, and you drink until you are inebriated. It's encouraged. There's nothing wrong with it. And I believe that not sure, but the intention could be to drink so you can converse with the dead. So who knows if there was other ingredients with this grilling and the eating? Don't know. Just saying.
Also, it could just be a party that they're gonna bang to later.
Yeah, it
So
could. Right.
you know,
Yes, and it could be that as well. Oh, brother.
all right. So let's continue. The porter
Yeah,
of
let's.
L's house chides them not to grill a steak for a dog, not to roast a rib for a cur. He chides El, his father too. Oh, who's El? So El's father also interesting. El sits somewhere. El settles into his wow. I don't know that word. Bacchanal.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got to look that
yeah.
up. Okay.
I think it's just the Marzea, because if you look over here to the left, the
Oh,
MRZHA, I think it's just the Marzea.
cool.
And I don't know if that's just again, because they're using shades, they'll use shades sometimes in this translation. So that could just be the translator choosing Bacchanal because that's like a wine festival. And this is like a
Yeah,
wine drinking. Ah,
an
ah.
occasion of wild and drunken revelry.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Oh, based
Right.
on Bacchus. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Mm.
Got it. Okay. L drinks wine till sated, vintage till inebriated. Yeah, he does. L staggers to his house, stumbles into his court. Ukamuna and Shunama carry him. Habayu then berates him, he of 2 horns and a tail. He slips in his dung and urine. El collapsed like one dead. El like those who descend to earth. Ashartu and Anat march off to hunt. Wow.
Okay. So should we continue? Because I feel like there's some more things that I want to
Yeah,
say
yeah. I
about
mean,
this.
this is awesome. This is
Mm,
like what a window into Ugaritic um, stuff that eventually moved over into our world. But
right.
yeah, man. Also, who is this Habayu, man? I mean, 2 horns and a tail.
I
You
want
know,
to know that. I'm not sure. I was wondering if there was some kind of connection. No, no, Humbaba. No, it doesn't even look the same. I was thinking Humbaba, and I think that's the one
right?
that's like the guard in the forest with the Gilgamesh, but I don't think so. Yeah, there's
That's
a
right.
lot of
Yeah,
things that I would love to do some further research. I've just not gotten there yet, but that's one of the
yeah.
questions I have. And I also want to know who is El's porter that feels like he has the right to tell God, like, yo, chill out, don't give that food to
Right.
that animal? Like, that's the high God. Like, who are you? But he's
So Mark Smith proposes that Habayu is another word for Reshef, another name for Reshef.
oh,
who-
shut up.
yeah.
And
So a
he's a
Euphoric
chthonic
god of
God.
war and plague. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he's the
So
god. He's a god of the underworld, so that he fits right in because we've got
yep.
other underworldly. I
Yeah, man.
I love this stuff.
I'm on
Okay,
it.
Ray Chef, yes, the
Yeah, Reshef. Yeah.
god of plague. Okay.
Yeah. Yet another understanding that Christians didn't make up the devil, just letting you know. Like it's just not
Right.
original. It's like completely
They didn't come
unoriginal.
up with it at all. No.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention, so we see Anat, the god of war, also a huntress, god of fertility of the herd, and Athart, read Ishtar, read Astarte, whatever name you want to call her. That's who Athtartu is in this text. And again, this is a god of war, a huntress, maidens, very active goddesses, and they are also attending this feast. We also see the god Yurik. For whatever reason, Yurik is grilling. So
He's
he's
grilling.
he is the moon god. Well, actually, I think there's a possibility, there's a connection there because they are goddesses who would also hunt by the moon. So I believe there's a possibility that's why he's also, certain gods worked together, were cohorts of sorts. You know exactly what I'm talking
Yes. Oh, right.
about. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So we left off with the not grilling a rack of ribs.
Yeah, rack of ribs, baby. Okay, so we're coming to an end here.
All right.
Sadly,
So
we got some
Athtartu
broken
and a
heads.
knot, and with them they brought back something. And when one heals to return to youth, on his brow one should put the hair of a dog. On top of the something unidentified plant and its stem. And this is it. I mean, they put the root down, but they have no idea what it is. And that happens all the time. It's like gopher wood.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what that is. Mix it with the juice of virgin oil. Yeah. All right.
Right. So now we see a sort of ritualistic part of the text where the goddesses go out to hunt. Sadly, we don't know exactly what they did, but they come back with the ingredients that will now heal. And if you are able, you're not able to see my cursor. No, you're not. Okay. But if you look at the line when it says, as one heals to return to youth, we can see that RPA word. So we can see the healer, that RPA is the healer portion. So they're healing L. So this is, some people have called this text the hair of the dog. It's a
Nice.
cure to
Nice.
what happens after one night of revelry and you've got a split and a headache. This is the special mixture that you use to cure. Dope, right? I mean, that's a freaking amazing that we have this written in stone to see how the gods interacted together. So where actually some of the stuff I should point out. So where is this taking place? It looks like this is taking place in God's palace, maybe some kind of temple. It's a sacred space because all the gods are there in attendance. And again, we just read it. We don't know exactly what this text is about, but it's definitely a celebration. We see ritual hunting, ritual feasting. So important to some degree. How often this was done, couldn't tell you if I tried.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to this bacchanal, I want to look further into that, if that was just a reference because Bacchus is the god of wine and this was a wine celebration. So there's some questions I want to answer. If anybody I haven't looked, but do we have anybody asking questions? Hey guys, I'm sorry. Oh, are the dead getting the feast or the mourners? Well, in this feast, oopsie, I say this one. In this feast, it looks like it's just for the gods, just for the attendees. But also in some of these feasts, the Rephaim attend. So it would be warriors. So some people, but not everybody. I don't have an answer for you. I wish I did. I wish it wasn't so vague. Why couldn't y'all just write every single damn thing out? Gotta be so secretive. Okay, let's keep. Was this where I was? Oh wait, okay. I'm gonna skip that because I want to show you something in. Okay, here we go. This I thought was a really cool story, bro.
Cool story, bro.
Cool story, bro. So this sarcophagus is from a very young king, Eshmanazar II, from around 525 BCE. And he passed away when he was 14 years old. And on it, it mentions the Rephaim. So if you wouldn't mind reading just the pink part, there's even far more that was on this tomb, but it's not important. I just want to discuss this particular pink part.
Got it. Let's see. Am I lying in this coffin and in this tomb, in the place where I have built? Oh, thou remember this. May no royal race and no man open my funeral couch, and may not seek after treasures, for no one has hidden treasures here, nor move the coffin out of my funeral couch, nor molest me in this funeral bed by putting another tomb over it. Whatever a man may tell thee, do not listen to him, for the punishment of the violators shall be every royal race and every man who shall open the covering of this couch, who shall carry away the coffin which I repose, and who shall molest me in this couch. They shall have no funeral couch with the Rephaim, nor shall be buried in graves, nor shall there be any son or offering to succeed to them, and the sacred God shall inflict extirpation on them. By the way, this is what I'm putting on my gravestone. Just like
Please, you better.
Now that I heard this, this is it.
You better
This
damn do it.
Gravestone. Yeah.
I'm gonna be very upset with you if you don't.
Don't worry, no need.
So remember what I had said before about the Rephaim being the ones who would welcome the next dead king, the next hero into the afterlife, coming to greet you, just what you want, really. You want to feel like your ancestor is going to be there waiting for you on the other side. Well, this is the funny part about this sarcophagus. Okay, so it's a basalt coffin that was shipped from Egypt, and the original script was erased, and this is what was written over it. So you tell me the audacity of robbing or taking somebody else's coffin.
Nice.
And then writing something like this that will say, hey, if you open this, if you molest this,
not me, you. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter for me.
It's all right. I've already done it. No more after me.
Hey,
yeah.
My money bought this fair and square. I can molest it all I want, but you,
right.
Yeah, I just thought that was the most hilarious thing. But we can see that even 525 BCE, this idea of the Rephaim is still going around. This is from Sidon. So somewhere northern Canaan. Is that a good description? I don't know.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. Just to give everybody, idea of where these ideas are being carried around. Whew. That was a lot of information. How do we all feel? do we have any questions? Because I probably did leave things out. I don't know. Rabbi Mike, do you have anything you'd like to add?
So here's what I'll say. I would say that what we should be doing are the things that we've been going over for the past 8 classes, is our light should be lighting up, our our spidey sense should be going up when we see these connections of intertextuality. We've seen we've seen other words and names that end up over in the Hebrew. Rephaim, from the idea of rufa, to heal in Hebrew, with fuah, healing. Our El is called a refuah, a healer, at certain points. So that is definitely a transition from the Ugaritic Semitic into the Hebrew. When we see things like other gods' names in terms of proper nouns, but then become molded into ideas, such as things like reshef, right, which means pestilence, or flames, or any flashes of things.
Yeah.
Like things in Job, it can mean like demons or burning pains or something like that. And so obviously a god of the underworld and all this sort of stuff, of course, that makes sense. That's where the etymology of these things come from, right? They're not out of a vacuum. They're pulled in from our neighbors, the Amorites, the Ugaritic, all that sort of stuff. And then, right, the ideas of death, right? Sheol, Valhalla, all these sort of things of how much the idea within a Jewish point of view, within the Hebrew Bible point of view, the Israelite tribal point of view, that death was something that was just like not something that they talked about, not something that they dealt with, because it was very confusing. There's all kinds of other mythology and things like that about death and where you go and afterwards, so much so that the Torah and the Hebrew Bible isn't even clear at all about it. It leaves really nothing. It was really the rabbinic texts after, in the 2nd to 5th century CE, that even tried to interpret the ideas of what from a biblical point of view would be life after death in that sort of way. But we do get to see the concerns of the neighbors, right? The Amorites and the Canaanites, all these sort of like who goes there and why, and who are the people who are doing things, what are the gods and the pantheons interacting with. So what you're seeing really is this trickle down from around, or trickle across, I guess, of around these peoples around the Israelites, right? The Amorites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Rephaim, whoever they are. And through language, we're starting to see how gods, again, we've seen this before, how godly names and godly characters and, polytheistic things, and they become, their anthropomorphization pulls away from themselves, and they become concepts through interpretation. And we saw that with names of gods, right? El Shaddai, we talked about before. Well, Shaddod was like a god of thunder, right? So El Shaddai, when they combine it together, God's this powerful, whatever it is. All these sort of things that you have to sort of step back and say, holy moly, nothing is original. All of that stuff happened. And then, right, we have to talk about this question, right, which is, when did the editing occur?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
Which is, it's a great question, but it's also a hard question to answer, right? I mean, some of the stuff that you're talking about is, you said what, 1900 to 1500?
Yeah.
BCE. That's a really long time ago. I mean, this is clay tablets, archaeology stuff. We're talking about when editing was even possible. We're talking very late. Like, things were canonized into the 1st century CE, right? We're talking post-exilic, so past 586 BCE,
Right.
when things started to get edited. So this stuff predates all of this by a millennia at least, right? So again, the stuff where it was sort of meshing in and
It was old then.
Yeah, it was old then. Right, exactly. This was old school then.
Right.
Say nothing of now, but like, so I mean, it's a lot. I mean, what it does to me, because I nerd all over this, but what it should do for us as students and critical thinkers is to want to see more of this, and to take the work that Ryan's done and pull it apart and say, wait a minute, that word sounds familiar, that name sounds familiar. Dig that little spiral and go down that rabbit hole, because you will find a connection to a word in Hebrew, to a word from the Torah, to a word, to a concept. And it's there. And that is what we talk about for these past 8 sessions, is intertextuality, literally texts interacting with one another. We've talked about it inside the Torah, but that's mostly my specialty. Ryan's specialty is bringing stuff from the ancient Near East and seeing those texts interact with ancient Torah texts and biblical texts, things like that. And this was just another great example of it. So this was like super fun, super cool, and head exploding amounts of information.
Yeah, it is a lot, and I wanted to make sure that I was circling back around.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that I didn't put on a damn slide was I wanted to show some of the ways that they, simply just wrote stories to demote these ideas or these heroes. Amos, I think it's Amos and Jeremiah, don't quote me, but I think it's there where they discuss the Marzea, like saying don't participate in that any longer. I may have even written it down, but somewhere. And also, I believe Amos talks about Sheol, and like you can't even hide from God in Sheol any longer. And obviously, in Ugarit, the Rephaim were living not the high life. I'm not saying that, but they were still alive, just had duties to welcome, the next dead dude. But according to Amos, like, don't be doing that Marzea no more. And certainly don't be drinking till intoxication.
Right.
And, because when you go down in the Sheol, you can't even hide down there. So don't even try it. Just simple as that. Write a cool story about it. Cool story, bro.
Which is exactly what this all used to be. These were all mythologies, right? The ideas of that, that it's divine writing, that it's historical, is again very late. All of this stuff is mythology, and all the Israelite stuff that went into it was
Jehovah's Witnesses have the date wrong, so it's really big for us to get it right.
They have a lot wrong, but you're right.
Don't dare.
What is the date that they think Jerusalem fell?
Is it 589? Or no, sorry, 607. Jesus Christ, I forgot. 607 BCE is the date. What's that?
607. What?
Yeah, I know.
Why? Multiple. I mean, like, it is not even. It's not even argued. I mean, that the Babylonians were like super proud of it. Whatever. Okay.
Sorry.
Whatever.
I can't say anything about giants, but what I can tell you is that there's been a lot of exploration through the land of Canaan, and you know what they have not found? Giants.
Yeah.
And actually, in fact, just quickly, what I did, it's not a lot. I was going to put more. I ran out of time, but this is just a small little sprinkling of some of the mentions and locations of where the giants were.
Right.
And not a daggum. And look, I'm not saying there wasn't tall people. Heck yeah, we see some really tall dudes nowadays, but when people like tell me about giants, I'm like, okay, well, I need to see some bones. I need them bones.
Right. some bones. And
I need that bones.
so I would say, in terms of what we see, a lot of the giant mythology that we see in the Torah is metaphorical, is meant for it's meant to like spook people a little bit. I mean, it was, the idea of the spies and Joshua and everything, like they look like giants to us. It's all very metaphorical, but when you get into weird Genesis stuff, like the gods having sex with men, and they made all, like, that's just pure mythology of, again, we shouldn't be talking about it historically. We're talking about the mythology of gods and humans
Right.
making giants together. This was a well-known myth, a well-known understood idea of the ancient Near East. And we see it not only in Israelite, but we see it in Amorite, we see it in Ugaritic, you see it in,
Right.
in all of that. And so what we can take from it, not that if there were giants or whatever, but that the idea of giants was a believed idea of the time, so much so that it made it into a lot of literature. It made it into songs and tablets and psalms and stories, and people knew about this idea. No one had ever seen one, but like this was something that they believed in, So, and that to me is that's much a better conversation than, where are the giant fossils,
Right.
right.
Yeah. I mean, and bones don't. I mean, who
Right.
knows? I don't know. Bones don't last that long. There could have been
Right.
giants 1,000 years ago. Something I don't freaking know.
Right. It's true.
But
you never know.
Right. I don't want to discount.
To different
I don't wanna
sizes.
discount anything.
Northmen were huge.
Hey,
Ancient Near East
that's
were
part of
tiny
it.
people.
Maybe those dudes came down, traveled down. I mean, come on. Look, people don't give the Phoenicians and a lot of these other people
Right.
credit for the way that they freaking traveled. This was a commerce place. Like Ugarit was a hub.
Mhm.
It was a port. There was a lot more traveling than people give our ancient ancestors for. They were very intelligent, and I really just hate all the poo-pooing and they're evil doers because they didn't worship the right God stuff. But yeah, who knows? Maybe that's where maybe them damn giant Norsemen came down and like, holy mother effing
They were a lot
hell.
taller, and they had big axes and red hair. They would look weird to us. I mean, for sure.
Absolutely.
So
Okay,
yeah,
so quickly.
go ahead.
Quickly, just to fixing my faith. I don't know if you saw the beginning of it. You might have to go back. But basically the Rephaim were just the people who lived in the land of Canaan. They were probably kings of certain, small little cities, like I had just shown, like Bashan, Ashtaroth, whatever. And as the Israelites are fighting their enemy, they just make them to be bigger than they are, which is just something you would do for, to build the character of the people, show the strength of the nation, maybe to tell other people, hey, don't F with us because, those giants you heard about, well, we defeated them all. But the Ugaritic text shows us that they were never described as giants. That is just an interpretation by Hebrew. Okay, let me pull off the, there we go.
So here are just very quickly some references that you had in your thing, right? But I pulled them up.
Thank you.
So Genesis 15:20 is a great example. They are listed next to the neighbors of the Israelites: Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, and Rephaim. So they are, to them, at least that particular Genesis author, another group of people that happen to be neighbors, right? And then they talk about the Rephaim country, right? In Deuteronomy, right? I assigned that to the Haftarite, Manasseh conquered it, or whatever it was, right?
Right.
But then you've got King Og of Bashan was left of the, right? So you've got the name of a king of these people, right? Very similar to Hittite kings, Amorite kings. So that's what, but this is here, Deuteronomy 2:11, which you can't trust Deuteronomy too much historically, but like the Anakites, they're counted as Rephaim.
I love how you'll just say it. I love it.
It's just 4 speeches that were just added later. But the Moabites called them Emim. This is, to me, a great concept in terms of self-awareness of the author, right? In terms of this is what we call them, but our neighbors called them this, right? So you may see them listed as imim in other literature that you see, right? So Deuteronomy was never meant to be a standalone that's all you have to read, right? You're supposed to know the other stuff also. But yeah, and then you can go down that rabbit hole. And yes, fixing my faith. This is my best. This is my favorite question ever. Yes,
It really is.
on lots of things.
I
On
promise you,
lots
it's
of
so
things.
hard to find the right information. I
Yes.
promise you, it is difficult.
Yes.
I have all the books, all the papers I've read, all that information, as always, is in the description. If you have any questions, I am really always happy to geek out about this stuff. And you know what I wanted to
Yeah.
say? You know what I read? I don't know if you read this as well, but Zamzumim supposedly is the onomatopoeia, and the
Nice.
Zamzumim is the sound of like the marching of the troops, like some
Love that.
some.
And that stuff
I
happened all the time.
know. Yeah, like
All the time, right?
wow, gives me
Because like you
chills.
don't see it in the English translation, right? But yeah, I mean the best like modern example is the Hebrew word for bottle, which is bakbuk, because if you turn it over, it goes bak 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 bak. That's it. That's it.
Shut up.
That's it.
I love it.
And
Oh,
so
that's
that's
so
a bottle
awesome.
sound is bak 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 bak. So it's called bakbuk.
That's so
So
funny.
yeah, so things as easy as that, but they become literature. They become ingrained and calcified, and all of a sudden you have this, right? And then you have a bunch of King James version readers being like, the bottle actually was this and the whatever. And you're like, you know nothing about the Hebrew thing or whatever it is.
And I think,
So,
you know what I want to
yeah.
say, I'm sorry, before I forget, I think that probably part of the problem is because everything is so centralized on Google around Christianity.
Yes. 100%.
And Christianity is where we start to get like huge conflations between like what happens in Genesis 6 with the sons of God, which are gods coming down to mate with the humans. And then subsequently we get like these giant babies.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily in the New Testament.
No.
They're putting these ideas into the New Testament, but people don't realize that's happening. And I think that's where like some of the big conflation is coming in with angels being cast down, and you know, that's what they are. But this is all like later interpretation, like much later.
Much later, like 3rd century CE, 4th century CE. So
Yes.
yeah, I mean what we're seeing through that, and forget the mess we've got now, but even in 4th century, 3rd century CE, we're talking about a completely different twist on theology of things that existed for thousands of years in a certain way, placing new meaning on them and then building up theology based on that. So that when someone says, you know, the snake in the garden was obviously the devil or Satan, Jews look at you like you're crazy. But a Christian is told that because it is built upon a particular new twist of that theology. And we go back even further, where if you were to ask an Amorite or a Hittite or a Perizzite about some of the stuff that's in the Bible, and we're like, well, this means this, they'd look at you like you're crazy, because it is a new interpretation to fit into the monotheistic idea or the Israelite idea. And it's not a malicious thing. It's just how things were done at the time. Like you took ideas and you built theology off of that. The problem is that Christianity did it and then became an empire and forced it on everyone. And all of a sudden there's a billion people. That's the only difference. That's it.
Okay. So, you know, I say this all the time, but canonization was weaponization.
Yes.
I mean, you know, the elites, whoever was an attendant,
literati, we'll call them.
Right. They had no right to assemble the Bible in the way that they did because they do it with their own agenda. They left out so many other texts, right? And all the translations are different. The Catholic Bible has different books. So many different. There's even books that are mentioned in the Bible that aren't even in the Bible. How are you going to mention a book and then
Right.
not even put it in the Bible, right?
Right.
So this is a pre-packaged piece of propaganda. They had no right to put a New Testament with a Old Testament. That ish pisses me off. It pisses me off till no end.
Yeah,
I
it's
I
problematic,
can't say
highly
it enough. It's
problematic.
not old. It's not a old anything. I'd love to write
Right.
a new piece of scripture and attach it to the freaking New Testament and call that ish the old New Testament. See how they like
They
it.
did that with the Quran, of course, but yes, but yes, but
Ah,
sure, you
damn.
can add another
God
one if you
damn.
want. But
Right.
yes, so yes, and I happen to have written a book that talks about this, but whatever, shameless plug. But
Yes.
the
It's hanging on my wall back there.
yes, but last question here that I'll answer very quickly is yes, we've talked about this a little bit. Hasatan literally means the accuser or the prosecuting attorney or whatever it
Yep.
is. Angelology in late century Job Judaism are beings that can only be controlled by God. They don't go off on their own. They only are within a certain realm of things. Hasatan is God's. I wish there was another word for this besides devil's advocate. Hasatan
Yeah.
is someone who is built specifically to
Oh.
argue with God. And so, no, not an enemy, just a tool.
Yeah.
So yes, but yes, all the things about typology and supersessionism and all this sort of stuff. What Christianity did is not new, guys. Okay, so
Right.
it's just more popular because it was forced upon people. But if you go back, right, the ancient Israelites tribes did that to all the other ones, right? Then you get to the kingdom of Israel. They had their sort of theological stuff. When books started getting added, like Deuteronomy is like, no, we're actually going to retell the stories in our way. And then you connect it to the other, like it's nothing new. It's just a question of who holds the power, who's got the pen, and then who's listening. And that's it. So yes, much longer story, but yes, 3 minutes left. Ryan, this is your show. I'm going to let you have the last word.
Well, I think I've pumped everybody with enough information, but I hope that I've kind of completed that full circle of why I thought this would be a cool idea to talk about, our high god El, give him a little more personality, you know, behind, who the god he is today that we know him, as well as see a little picture of some of the other gods that would be included in these feasts. Why were they included in these feasts? Why is the ritual hunting so important? And I think that's really to show that God El isn't the old God that people, even though he's the father of time and the father of years, I don't see him anymore as this old
No,
decrepit God. I
no.
actually think he was really active at this time, like super active. And that's why he was even cool enough to need to be used to probably kind of elevate Yahweh to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, hey, if you got that cool guy, like, oh yeah, that's me. That's who I am.
Yeah.
People like, oh, I know who that is. Oh, he's that really cool god who like shot his arrow up into the sky, but it was really like his big old wang.
His
Like,
Wang and
like
had
I know him.
yeah, and he like decided, are you going to be my daughters or my wives and all that other stuff. And
Yes.
then here getting drunk so much so that this guy with two horns and a tail smears crap on him to teach him a lesson. I mean, that's not an old dude. This guy can partay. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So we need to show some new light. Oh God, I hate using
Yes.
that word as a Jehovah's Witness, but we need to shed some new light on these old texts.
Yeah.
And I also hope that I could explain to you what the the Rephaim were, that they weren't
Yeah.
really giants. They're just the dudes who lived in Canaan, who were basically the enemy. of the new cool God Yahweh, and they
Mhm.
duked it out. They lost. That's what happens.
What happens?
And in death now they were huge giants that somehow this small little nation was able to overcome. Like that's
Right.
a dope war story, right?
Yeah.
It worked. It absolutely worked. And so much so that people thought about it enough to want to write a new a fan fiction,
That's right.
glazed over fan fiction about it,
Fan
right?
fiction, man.
That's how good these stories are. And that's the
Yeah.
sad part is people don't realize they're cool, interesting stories, not morals.
Right. They're
It's a
just good
library.
mythology.
It's
Good
just,
mythology.
yeah, it's just good stuff. Let's see it for what it is. And I just want to add that little bit of humanity to
Heck
who the
yeah.
people were that lived at this time. Okay. I think I've said enough. I
We will
love
see
this.
you
This
guys
was
not
awesome.
next week.
No.
I'm out of town next week, but we will return on the 29th with some Halloween stuff, spooky stuff that I'm going to bring you, ghosts and demons and witches from the Bible and all kinds of fun stuff, and dragons because we love that story.
Yeah, dude, you need to write your like goobly goblin golem
I
book.
know we
You
got
need to do that.
lots of good stuff coming your way for the 29th for
Mhm.
Halloween. Otherwise, same bad time, same bad channel. Thank you all. We really appreciate it.
We do. We appreciate your love. We appreciate the comments, the support. Please do not forget to like. If
And
you want to
subscribe.
share, do that. You better be
Share.
subscribed. Hit that
Do
bell,
it.
baby. Do it.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye, y'all. Thank you, Rabbi Mike.
Thank you.